Well, welcome back to the Musical People and Journeys Rock Festival Part 2, where we have the power of 3. Do you like my segues? Do you like it? Do you like it? Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Trish.
Morning.
So normally we have the power of 5, but Nathan is currently off studying, and Ian unfortunately wasn't able to make today, but he's going to get his votes over. So today's votes out of 5, because normally we have to vote to see, we need at least 4 to see whether somebody's going to get into the Hall of Fame. So, but everybody, you're going to have our opinions, and then we'll update everybody as to whether it gets onto the Hall of Fame or not, and whether it makes our shortlist, because excitingly, we're coming up to the end of the year where we'll be looking at our top albums. Will any of our 7 acts, 8 acts even, 8 acts, got it right this time, 8 acts get into that hallowed list for our albums of the year, because we're coming close up to that. So what is our lineup? Well, we've got Manntra. Now, we've already reviewed Manntra, but because of our history with Manntra, we've done it on both stages. Edenbridge, Alan and Olsen with their new album, Army of Dreamers. Edenbridge album, by the way, is Shangri-La, or Shangri-La. And then Alan and Olsen with Army of Dreamers. The Dead Daises with Radiance. Stratovius with Survive. Suede with Autofiction. The Who with The Rumble of Thunder. And Ozzy Osbourne with The Patient number 9. So, without further ado, let's crack on with Manntra and their album Creature, spelt with a K. So, just to give you a bit of background, as we've known Manntra from the past, the lead singer of Manntra was almost a customer of mine, bizarrely, we won't go into that, but he sent me over a CD. We reviewed his original album about over a year ago. So this album was released in August, and so we kind of reviewed that second album. So we've kind of brought it forward for a bit of an update. So you guys, did you guys review? You didn't review. You kind of listened to that original album, didn't you? I think it was the Monsters of Madness album. Trish, what did you think of their new album?
As soon as you press play, you're met with modern melodic death metal, contrasting elements of other genres, including gothic and folk. Feeling the passion and energy coming through your headphones when listening to Manntra, who are relatively unknown, but I have fallen under their spell, and I would say this album is in for a place on my albums of the year list. I bloody loved it.
Oh, really? So, what did you think? Did you think it was better than the other album, or just as good?
I would say it's just as good. I mean, I've downloaded both and some other just songs of theirs onto my playlist. So I just like their sound, really.
It is an interesting sound, isn't it?
Yeah.
Paul, was this your first foray? I think I did play you a few tracks on that previous album, like Ori Ori and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember playing Ori Ori, but I didn't get around to listening to the previous album, and what a mistake that was. So Manntra formed in 2011 and are from Umag in Croatia. They've been categorized as an industrial metal band, where industrial metal being the fusion of heavy metal and industrial music, which employs repeated metal guitar riffs, sampling, synthesizer and sequencer lines, and distorted voices. You know, the biggest examples being Nine Inch Nails and Marilyn Manson. Creature is a fourth title, and for me is more of a gothic, as Trish has already said, gothic folk mashed with an element of industrial metal. Each track is varied and upbeat enough to hold interest to gain continued listens, and this is important for tracks such as Volhoff, Nightmare, Black, Not Guilty and Oblivion to take hold and corrupt you to the gothic side. Currently, one of my favourite goth metal bands are Creeper, and with this creativity, Manntra is quickly going to catch them up, and I'm digging into their back catalogue as we speak.
Oh, very, very good. It's quite interesting, as I did on last week's show. I love the first album. I absolutely adored it. And there was something missing on this one, and I think the guys like Will and Simon who had previously reviewed, we all kind of agreed that there was something missing, because whether the vocals were off, there was more industrial than there was folk, because the folk side of it was more on there. It didn't feel, and the previous album was a bit rushed. They had like the great story where basically they had they got given a deal and said like, yeah, okay. And the recording company assumed that they'd written everything, and they hadn't written anything. And so they literally produced it, written it and produced it within like 3 weeks. And so there was something raw about it. And this one felt it was maybe there wasn't something right, particularly with the vocal side of it. It was very kind of. I think in the previous album he mixed that folk more and that backing vocals to break up what was that gruff voice. For me, anyway, it didn't feel as good. I didn't enjoy it as much as the first album. I enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it as much. But it was still a good album from that side of things as well. But yeah, interesting. Now your take on the fact if you hadn't listened to that previous album, which really caught us by absolute storm. But okay, well, positive start to the festival then with the power of 3. Let's get your votes, Trish.
5.
5. Golden ticket 5. Paul.
4.
4. Okay. So I'd given it a 3. Obviously we won't know whether it's going to get into the Hall of Fame, but it was certainly probably going to be thereabouts. I think it kind of got into our kind of top 40 albums and that side of things as well. So, but there we go. Right. Well, who can follow that? Where shall we go next? So next on stage we have Edenbridge and Shangri-La. Paul, have you heard of Edenbridge before?
Yeah. How can you not, really? Edenbridge, an Austrian symphonic metal collective from Shangri-La, with Shangri-La being the 11th studio album. The opening track, At First Light, is a taste of what is to come on this album. Climbing to symphonic power metal and descending into an instrumental prog rocker's dream, and everywhere else in between. The vocals of Eldersbacher are quite stunning. You can feel along with hearing what is being sung. Unfortunately, if you've heard some of Edenbridge's tracks before, such as myself, Sri Lanka is more the same. The music quality is superb, but I kind of wish they'd moved in a different direction and spiced things up. Repeated listens means that the initial wonder starts to fade really, really quickly, and the last opus of 4 split songs before you ignore the rest of the album because it's all instrumentals. It's just too long for repeated listens. So yeah. Okay,
interesting. Trish?
I apologise now, I'm going to repeat some of what Paul has said. Austrian symphonic metal collective band. This album has lots of orchestral elements which progresses throughout the album. All this being said, this album just sounds like any other symphonic metal band. Not a lot of differentiation between them. Certainly it's not the worst album I've ever heard. It's just not anything special, unfortunately.
Yeah, I kind of go along with what you're saying. I think this might have started. I think you're right, Paul. I think this started off between, headed up towards the higher echelons of the score. The first listen, you go, oh wow, and then you go, you're right. There's something missing. There's something not quite. It's almost like they go, yeah, we're going to go maybe in this direction, and then we're going to bring it back into this direction a little bit, and without really kind of, it works, but it's a beautiful album. But it isn't a stunning album, and you think it could be, when you benchmark it against some of the stuff that we've listened to, it's really good and it's really nice. It's a nice album without being like, oh my god, what a fantastic album. Do you know what I mean? It's a little bit.
It's a type of album. If you want to go for a nap, it's something you put on. You know, it's not impactful enough. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
dynamic enough. The songs are far, far too long. Change direction too much. It's just, yeah. But you can't deny the talent and the musicianship, and the singer is superb as well. I wish she'd branch out and go on with other people to do some stuff that are more impactful. So
Yeah, we listened to a band on a previous stage called Scarlet Dawn, and she had an amazing voice, but she contained the whole album, and it was beautiful. But you've just got to go, go on, girl, punch it. And with Shangri-La, they punch it, but then they go off and not only punch it, but then go, oh, no, we didn't really mean to do that. It's kind of like, we kind of give you a little bit, and it's just, it was a little bit all over the place, but it was still a lovely album. No denying that. It was still an enjoyed album. So let's crack on then. Well, Paul? Let's give you ratings.
2.5.
2.5. Okay. Trish?
3.
3. Well, I think I might have enjoyed it a little bit more. Not by much. 3.5 for me. 3.5. So we're looking at. You're looking at about. Well, funny enough, an average of 3. So funny enough. So yeah. Anyway, well, we'll find out what next week or sometime in the week. What Ian feels of that. So who can be next? What? Well, we all know, of course, but and I think we've already told you as well. So next on stage we have Alan Olsen, Army of Dreamers. Never heard of them before, so let's start again with you then, Paul. Who the heck are Alan and Olsen?
Well, believe it or not, Army of Dreamers reunites two metal vocalists, Symphony X's Russell Allen and Dark Elemental Annette Olsen, formerly of Nightwish. Their vocals have been directed by songwriter, composer and guitarist Magnus Carlsen, which we heard some of his work in a couple of albums not so long ago, to produce a well-crafted symphonic and melodic heavy power metal affair. Neither artist transcends the other, and as such makes this a far more enjoyable experience. However, for me,
theme coming here.
Yeah, however, you go to these concerts and they put one band on that sounds exactly like another, and you just go, well, was that the same one as before? Or what? Did I just fall asleep or something? And so the music, although complicated on times, is a little too repetitive. There are gems here like So Quiet Here and Out of Nowhere, but we've heard better before. Those Wind Pirates one that we saw was far, far better than this and far more enjoyable. But it wasn't a bad album.
Trish?
So melodic metal, quite generic. Nothing stood out, but I thought, wow, I need to look into what this band has done previously. Yes, it's an easy listen, and I made the mistake of actually watching one of their videos, which don't do the album justice, as it's them just singing to a camera and nothing else going on, to the point that it was quite cringy to watch. Unfortunately, it was a thanks, but no thanks from me.
Oh, really? And it's really interesting about Nightwish, because I've never... Simon, one of our other panellists, could have reviews back to, like, At Least It's Not Nightwish or something, as if, like, I think I'm going to have to sample Nightwish, because they seem to be really Marmite. You either love them or hate them, but I'd never... I think maybe they might be an early power metal band, but I'd never really listened to them. So
really,
no, I hadn't.
Wow.
As I say, I'm on a journey. I missed this kind of patch. I didn't really kind of, get into that back then. So
well, even if you was listening to metal, this is definitely left field, isn't it? Completely. And Nightwish was, but yeah, if you're going to listen to anything of Nightwish, is their Phantom of the Opera version of Phantom of the Opera, which is pretty good.
Okay, all right, I'll take that in then. So again, like this was my sort of music. There's no denying that it was my sort of music, and there's no denying that I actually quite enjoyed the album, and I really liked it. I didn't love it, because you're right. I mean, when you try to benchmark it against one of the albums of the year, which was A Vision of Atlantis, it doesn't kind of reach up to those standards. But there were still, you're absolutely right about the tracks you mentioned, Paul. There was still moments of utter magic in this album, but it did just feel a little bit of the same thing kind of going through. When you benchmark it against Visions of Atlantis, which was incredibly powerful and yet also changed the pace and changed it, there was something special about it. This was a solidly good symphonic power metal album. It was well produced. Carlson. I can see where his influences come into that. You're right. They matched each other really well. I did like the contrast of the voices between Alan and Olsen. I thought they matched it. It was just really nice because he had a more of a gruffer voice, and it just seemed to work. It just did seem to work. I thought this was a really good album, really solid album for me. So, all right. Well, let's find out our votes then, Paul.
Well, I have to go with this week's magic number.
2.5. 3. Yeah, the power of 3.
Okay.
Gets a 3.
Or you could go 3.3.
Jish.
2.5.
2.5. Okay, I give it a 4. I quite enjoyed it. So, but there we go. So, probably online for a 15. Who knows? Certainly, that solid album, really good. Right, well, we kind of really had kind of very much power symphonic kind of metal opening acts, really. But who can we follow that with? Will we change of pace? Let's find out, because next on stage we have the Dead Daises and their album Radiance. Will it have radiated wondrous music or cast a shadow on what's happened? Trish, Dead Daises. Had you heard of the Dead Daises before?
No, I'd never heard of them before. And at 36 minutes in length, the 10 songs are short and snappy, with big riffs, plenty of hooks, and lots of melody. There's nothing on here that disappoints. It hit all of my sweet spots.
Did you liken them to anybody you'd heard before? If you had to say the Dead Daisies, and you've got, if you like Bon Jovi, for example, you'd love the Dead Daisies.
I don't know, actually. Without listening to it again, then I that's a question now. I'll have to listen to it to make that comparison.
No.
But at the time of thinking of listening to it, nothing sprung to mind. Why?
I'm just curious. Just curious. Paul, Dead Daisies.
Well, they definitely sounded like somebody to me, and I'm going to tell you why. In 1976, vocalist David Coverdale left Deep Purple. He released 2 solo albums, Whitesnake in 1977 and North Winds in 1978. Later, he put together a band, David Coverdale's Whitesnake, as we've all known now as Whitesnake. While being successful in the UK and Europe and having an odd hit on both sides of the continent, it wasn't until the remix of Slide It In album in 1984 that Whitesnake,
what an album,
broke into the American market, selling over 500,000 copies in the US by 1986. However, he had an illness with his sinuses, and the band broke up. After having to rebuild the band, forgive me if you look a little bit puzzled where I'm going, but having rebuilt the band in 1987, the 1987 album sold over 8 million copies in the US alone and was the most commercial successful album. As such, the influence of Whitesnake sound remains today in so many bands, including the Dead Daisies. And also, Coverdale has rotated through more musicians than we have time here to name. Needless to say, this current version of the Dead Daisies features guitarist Doug Aldrich and drummer Brian Titch, who have been members of Whitesnake. Dave Lowry is the founding member of the band, and since 2019, Glenn Hughes, formerly of Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, has been the frontman and bassist. To say Dead Daisies is a supergroup is an understatement. On first listen, the album sounds like a hard rock homage to White Daisy of Whitesnake and Dio, but repeated listens result on radiance growing on you. Hugh's range is huge, and he has a pleasant voice that makes an easy listen. Overall, this is a great album to listen to, and one I will be returning to.
Now I know why I liked it so much.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. It was one of those... Do you know, it's weird, isn't it, when you go to yourself, I like an album, and yet something inside you tells you that you should love it. And for me, I couldn't love the album. I was enjoying it, but there was something... I don't know what it was. Sometimes an album hits you and you just love that, and I don't know what it was. I just felt it very, very samey as a samey album. It was good and it was well produced, but there was nothing. There was nothing new here. There was nothing like, oh wow. It was just a solid rock album without being anything special. There was just nothing that flew out at you and went, oh my god. It wasn't a particular track that I really want to listen to that track again. It was just a little bit, it felt safe and it felt nice without it being anything special for me. So but I enjoyed it. It was good, and I think you're right, it did sound very Whitesnakey, but a little bit heavier than Whitesnake, which obviously would be that kind of influences from Deep Purple, etc. And I wasn't aware of the background either when I asked the question. So yeah, it was all right. It was good without it being amazing. So okay, let's find out. Let's put some votes to that then. I think this could do well. So Paul,
it's a 3.5 from me.
3.5. Oh, I was expecting a little bit more from that review, but there we go. Trish.
Of course, I gave it a 5.
A 5 for Trish. A 5 for Trish. It got a 3.5, the same as you, Paul. So
yeah.
So yeah, 3.5. So
maybe if I had a couple more months, it would have grown. It would have had more. But and I think it is something that's going to be on the playlist and it's going to grow on me. And then
I've downloaded all of their stuff.
Yeah. Well, you would.
I would. That is correct.
I mean, and let's be honest about it. The last few weeks, Trish, you have obviously been a little bit more reserved with your 5s, so it's got to be really special these days to get your golden ticket. So
it is.
This could get top 20 albums. We'll find out when our missing link submits their views. So anyway, right, okay. Who is next? Well, I mean, the concert's hotting up, people. Hotting up. So next up, we have Stratovius and their album, Survive. Paul, tell us a little bit about Stratovius.
Must I? Okay. Stratovius are a Finnish power band that formed in 1985. Since their formation, they've released 15 studio albums, 4 DVDs, and 5 live albums. In its history, the band has gone through many chaotic lineup changes, and after founding guitarist Timo Tolkki's departure in 2008, there are no founding members of the band that remain. It is interesting. This is interesting, as this is the first time I've heard of them. Survive simply races along with that Iron Maiden combined with power metal sound. Years are not left to that continuing frantic drumming that most power bands fall into. Jens Johansson on keyboard and Mattis Kupinen on guitar switch it up to move the tracks along, while Timo Kotapelto voice is pleasant and one I certainly don't mind listening to. Overall, this album is a fabulous album, and if I was going to introduce anyone to power metal genre, this album would be the one I would recommend. However, it isn't the strongest power metal band that I've listened to.
Yeah. Trish?
Well, I'd never heard of this Finnish power metal band before. The album had heavy guitars and orchestral sections which work, but I found it a very generic metal album. It's enjoyable, but nothing actually stood out to make me think, wow. I think if I had to pick any track off of the album, it would be Before the Fall. But yeah, sorry, it wasn't really for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of not surprised by that, because it was definitely a little more. I mean, we talked about the previous stage. We talked about bands like, because we did Megadeth, and you know, you can quarantine Megadeth as a thrash metal band, and I would say, well, how would you designate a thrash metal band? And it's really fast guitar, you know, heavy kind of fast guitar, that sort of kind of beat to it, and I kind of go, okay, get that, because I think when we were back in the 80s, Paul, thrash metal for us was a bit too heavy, and I'm not going down that route, so I kind of skipped that Metallica, and as I've got older, I've come to appreciate it a lot more and really enjoyed it. So I thought the Megadeth album was quite good. So it was very interesting conversation around that. It's just a shame that the lead singer of Megadeth's voice is pretty tosh, really. Otherwise, it would have been a sensational album, but it was still good. But anyway, so Stratovarius kind of goes more towards leaning, but not too far into that sort of thrash metal kind of sound, mixed in with that power metal kind of genre. And I know that that's kind of maybe just above your top end of your range, where what I see you tend to like your music, but it was a really good album. I mean, I agree with Paul. I thought this was a cracking album, and I like that bit more of a faster pace of that power metal, and I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed the album. I thought it was really, really, really good. But you're right, there's better out there. Don't get me wrong, better than the likes of Battle Beast, who everybody seems to love for some reason. But it was certainly a really good kind of power metal. And now that we're into, I think it's like we've done over 120 albums now and pushing up. You know, you start to put benchmarks in. You start to go, well, this has to be up there with the likes of the other power metal bands that we've got. And it was really good, but it wasn't exceptional. But it was a really good album. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and a nice surprise, because I think I'd heard of Stratovarius, never really listened to them, but I know they'd been around for some time. So you go, well, but yeah, solidly really good album, really good. Paul, let's get your vote, shall we?
It's a 3 from me.
A 3? Oh, I thought it was going to be higher than that. Crikey, you guys are giving me missed signals here. What's your name, Ian, for God's sake?
Well, like I said, if I was going to introduce someone to the power metal genre, this is the album I would do it, because it's easier, whatever. But when you compare it to the likes of Sabaton and Nordic Union and so forth, it doesn't.
I think we define Nordic Union as not a power metal band.
Yeah, they just came to mind. I can't think of the other band I was thinking of, but yeah.
Okay, Trish.
2.5.
Got a 4 from me. I thought it was a really terrific album. I thought it was better than that, people need to be properly looking at. Right. So, who's next? Let's find out who is next. Let's just change it up. We've had a lot of power metal. I think it could be time for a change. So let's find out who is next on stage. So next we have Suede. The legends are Suede and their album Auto Fiction. Let's find out, because this is a bit of a change up from what we've been listening to. So Trish, have you heard of Suede?
Yeah, of course I have. This album is quite rockier than earlier Suede stuff I've listened to. It needs more than one listen to appreciate the power and energy that Suede have, and it will please their loyal fans but gain a new crowd of fans with its gnarly rock.
Ooh, short and sweet. Does that mean you liked it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to see them next year.
Are you really? Oh, okay. Excellent. I think they've been doing quite a lot of touring at the minute, haven't they? I think Gila, who works with you in the office, she's been seen him a couple of times already, I think.
Yeah.
So okay. Paul, Suede, fan? Not fan? Tell us your
Well,
thoughts.
Suede hit the music scene in 1992 and were dubbed the best new band in Britain by the Melody Maker. The self-titled debut album hit the top of the UK chart, and by 1994 they were regarded as one of the big four Britpop bands alongside Oasis, Blur, and Pulp. The success continued with further chart-topping albums, but the 2001 and 2002 albums were commercial flops, and the band disbanded in 2003. They got back together in 2010 and for some reunion gigs, and the release of their sixth album, Bloodsports, in 2013 which returned the band to the top 10 in the UK. Fictionist.
It's autofiction.
Autofiction.
Yeah,
I've misspelled it. Is their ninth album that continually crosses the line between pop rock and punk rock. It's energetic, raw, and full of anger. However, for me, it's too 1980s. Indeed, the 15 Again track just summed it up, and it wasn't something I wanted to return to. The first first four tracks start off with the same chords. It's not until that boy on the stage that Suede switched things around. But to be honest, they'd lost me by then.
Really? Okay. Interesting. It's kind of interesting. They lost me right from the word go. However, people have been telling me that they were a brilliant band live, and I went. My first impression was generic indie rock, generic, and then I went, yeah, well, maybe I'll give it another listen. And it's very interesting what you said, Trish, because I went second listen and I thought, that's not bad actually. It's better than the first. Better than I first thought of it. And then the third listen was actually quite like that. By the fourth listen, I loved it. But literally by the fourth listen, I don't know whether it struck. Definitely not 80s, maybe late 90s. That sort of kind of indie kind of punk rock. And I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not stuff that's not been done before, but there was definitely a lot of power and energy in there. And then when you actually listen a bit more to the lyrics, there is a bit more substance to them, for sure. So it was albums that have this, don't they? They creep up on you. I tend to go, if I can listen to an album, if it was listenable, I will give it another chance, and I will give it, and then sometimes albums kind of go like we've done with some of the early stuff, where after the first listen it's kind of gone there. This one did the opposite. It just grew and grew and grew, and I really liked the album by the end of it. It was very, very energetic, very powerful, good lyricisms. Yeah, a little bit generic on some of the musicality, but solid album, really good. Enjoyed better. Definitely an album that you need to let grow on you, I think. So, Paul, do it a favour, listen to it a few more times.
Well, the first time I listened to it in the car, which was probably a mistake, I thought, well, none of these songs are going to thing. Second time I was on the headset, and you know what? I didn't want to listen to it anymore.
Right, Trish, let's just kick the votes then.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5. Paul?
1.5.
We've been really generous up until now, haven't we? 3.5 from me. 3.5. So I think on track to be pretty solid. It's a bit different anyway. But now we really need something. We need something. We've changed it up. So let's change it up some more, shall we? Let's move on. Let's welcome our next stage. Who is next? What's this I hear? What? Far in the distance. It's a rumble. It's a rumble of thunder. And the Who, H-U, not W, H-U. The Who. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, Paul, have you heard of this band before?
Yes.
So, tell us
My son's into world music. Obviously, I've heard them gargling salt and what the hell you doing? I'm practicing throat singing. Okay. So yeah, I've heard of The Who before. The Who are a Mongolian folk metal band who formed in 2016. Some of the band's lyrics include old Mongolian war cries and poetry, but what makes them unique is they blend in of rock and metal elements with traditional Mongolian instruments, with the art of throat singing, which just basically sounds like singing while gargling with a throat full of phlegm. In late 2018, they released 2 videos on YouTube of their songs UVUVU and Wolf Totem, which got them over 161 million views by March 2022. In 2019, Totem Wolf reached #1 on Billboard's hard rock digital song sales, making Who the first Mongolian music act to top a Billboard chart. In September 2018, they released their first album, The Gereg, which is the term used for a diplomatic passport from the time of Genghis Khan, and has been fully embraced by the rock world. Rumble of Thunder is their follow-up album, and while maintaining their trademark sound, incorporates more Western influences. While they've done collaborations with Papa Roach and Lizzie Hale of Maelstrom, this album is free from such influences. However, at times they step away from metal in favour of zippy pop-orientated numbers like Triangle, Teach Me, and By Bijingi, a booming folk pop gem that will reduce crowds to a joyful, sweaty mess. It is moments like this that I truly wish I could speak Mongolian, but then knowing the actual lyrics of these songs might be a massive disappointment. Might actually mean, oops, I've spilt my bowl of rice again, so perhaps it's all best left to the imagination.
Oh, Trish. Follow that, Trish.
Oh, follow that. Oh, sorry. Okay. You said some of the bits that actually I was going to say, but so at times they step away entirely from metal to some pop numbers, like the Triangle, which I loved. With this album, The Who have easily sidestepped from their Gereg album to deliver an infectious clutch of bangers. It's hypnotic sound that lures you into their world, even though you can't understand what they are saying as it's foreign, but it still makes you want to listen to it.
Yeah. So let me tell you how it is. All right, let me just tell you how it is. It's instrumental and it's foreign language, and I hated it. I hated every. No, I didn't. I loved it. It was amazing. It was fantastic. It was the best thing I've ever heard. It was, and this is the problem. They goddamn hypnotise you. It's not fair. It's just not fair. Every fibre of your body goes, what are they saying? What are they talking about? What the hell is this? And you go, I don't care. I simply don't care. I'm in the moment. It's taking me along. I have a theory that they are basically some sort of demon worshipping band who are out to hypnotise the whole world with their noise and their sound, and it's every part. I mean, I don't like instrumentals on it, and I don't particularly enjoy songs I can't understand the lyrics to. It drives me mad. You know, everybody says, oh, Rammstein are the best. They're German. I don't understand German. How can I understand the lyrics if I don't know what they're singing about? For me, that's part of the musicality of what I love about music. Getting into the words. You know, if I go to power metal, I want to be, you know, this is why Sabaton are so amazing, because I understand, I'm there with them, I understand the lyricisms. I don't understand this, but I don't care. I just simply don't care, because it hypnotises you, and it takes you to a place where you are just in happy land, where you just smile and you just go along with it. And for once, unlike most foreign songs. I struggle, and again, this is no disrespect to people who enjoy it. I struggle taking myself off to a place where I make my own lyrics up to that music, because it's just the way I am. With this, though, I literally can make up my own words to it. I really can, should I kind of get there as well. This is, and the top three tracks, this is Mongol, Triangle and Black Thunder for me, with just like, oh my god, they are just, I struggled weaning myself off the album. I made the mistake, because I was looking forward to this album, of listening to it, the first album I listened to. It took me a week to wean myself off it before I would then start listening to something else. That's how hypnotic it was. It was permanently on in the car, permanently on. I just couldn't get it out of my head. Couldn't. So I literally, it was like a drug. I had to wean myself off it in order to start listening to other music, because it was so hypnotic. And my problem here is it is hypnotic. Because at some point you're going to wean yourself off that drug, and at some point you're not going to want to get back on it. So therefore, is it a longevity album because nothing else will ever matter again? Do you know what I mean? You're just there. You're there. Nothing else matters. But yeah, it's an absolute cracker. It's a cracker. Yeah, just that's how I felt about it. I stopped short of calling them Satan worshippers, because that's you can just die hard. It's just nuts. It shouldn't work, should it? It shouldn't. It shouldn't work. And somehow it does. That blend of industrial folk music, it just somehow works. Anyway, right. Let's get our scores, shall we, Paul?
It's a 4 from me.
Trish.
4.5.
It doesn't get a 5 because there wasn't. If it was like with Wolf Totem and stuff, that was in English, and if there was one track on there that had been in English, I think I would have possibly given it a 5. But it also got a 4.5 for me as well. So I think this is going to be up there with one of the albums of the year for whatever doubt. It's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I don't give a damn what Ian says. It's going to be up there, and it's going to get into our the list for the album of the year for sure. It was. I would love to see these guys live.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
love to see the. I just would. I mean, I would never leave the venue for a week because I'd still be there in a stupor, going and it's just extraordinary. It's just an extraordinary sound, isn't it? When I first heard Wolf Totem, I go, what the hell is this? I mean, it is just an extraordinary sound. And I think I mean, Wolf Totem was in English. Commercially, I think, and I love the fact that some part of me also goes, well, they haven't sold themselves out because they haven't gone over to that commercial element by putting, they kept true to their roots, etc. as well. But there would be even a phenomenal commercial success if actually they were.
Wolf Totem, when it was released, it was not in English.
Oh, was it not? Oh, interesting.
No, they obviously artists wanted to work with them, and that was. They re-released it as singles after.
It's extraordinary sound. It is extraordinary sound. Okay, why? How do you follow that? Well, you can only follow that with a possible legend, can you? So let's welcome next on stage. Well, let's find out who next on stage is. So we get to our headline act, which is the none other, the incomparable, the legend. That is Ozzy Osbourne and patient number 9. I don't know why patient number 9, but let's find out, shall we? Trish, you must be Ozzy's from back in the day. Are you an Ozzy fan?
I am, actually.
Are you? Excellent.
Yeah. So this is his 13th solo studio album. The metal icon's health struggles have been well documented in recent years, whether he's been preparing for life-changing surgery. And he could well have been patient number 9, who knows, that's why he's titled this album. But he sounds far from the frail man. Patient number 9 isn't doom and gloom. It's an exhilarating album with team-ups with Post Malone, Pearl Jam's Mike McCready. This album is a piece of hard rock.
Cool. Right. So, an Ozzy fan. Paul, are you an Ozzy fan?
So, he's been around for a long time, so you can't deny that. What can and can't be said about Ozzy is legendary, really. But anyway, regarded as the godfather of heavy metal and often called the Prince of Darkness, his exploits with Black Sabbath from 1970 to 79, where eventually he was fired for alcohol and drug issues, and who knows what, are legendary. So some of the albums that were produced at that time and made the world wake up to heavy metal. Ozzy recalls, after getting the boot from Sabaton, that I got £96,000 for my share of the name, so I just locked myself away and spent 3 months doing coke and booze. My thinking was, this was my last party, because after that I'm going back to Birmingham and the Dole. However, he was signed up by Jet, and along with bassist Daisley and guitarist Rhodes, created the Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman albums, which helped him break his name in the USA. Rhodes' unfortunate death is well documented, and his influence on modern heavy metal forms holds to his enduring guitar work. Of the guitarists that followed, Zakk Wylde has been the most steadfast Rhodes replacement. Besides his TV reality show, The Osbournes, from 2002 to 2005, Ozzy has starred in Ozzy and Jack's World Detour since 2016, keeping him in the public eye. 3 years ago, he released his 12th studio album, Ordinary Man, where he was recovering from a staph infection and had to have major neck surgery. Also announcing around that time that he had a form of Parkinson's disease. As such, the album was very dark, often talking about the end. In contrast, Patient Number 9 is a refreshing change. It is Ozzy doing music because it's a laugh. It's what he loves. The guest list has expanded, as Trish has mentioned, to include long-time gunslinger Zakk Wylde, Black Sabbath's guitarist Tommy Iommi, Pearl Jam's Mike McCready, Metallica's bassist and former bandmate Robert Trujillo, Cream legend Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Taylor Hawkins, among others. They've all been allowed freedom of expression, and in each collaboration they have stepped up to the mark and performed some great solos. As such, the album shows great variety and energy. Ozzy often has a gloom over his lyrics, but it wouldn't be an Ozzy album if it didn't. Overall, though, this is a cracking heavy metal album, and it was much, much more than I was expecting.
Good. Oh, well, that's nice to hear.
And now here it comes.
So Ozzy's voice, you either love or hate, and I hate his voice. I just hate it. I think he is probably the most overrated singer that's ever been in existence. I just do. I just think that there's obviously something there in terms of how he can compose a rock album. He obviously has an influence, and there's obviously a talent there, but I can't stand him. I really can't stand him. It's the biggest. I mean, I would rather listen to Neil Diamond, guys. I really would. I would rather put myself through a Dream Theater album than have to sit through his goddamn voice. I listened to it once because it's interesting. The musicality was fantastic. You know, it was good. But I just couldn't listen to his voice. I really couldn't. I really struggled to get through a song. I hated it. I hate him. I hate it.
I think if you've got that block there as well from the beginning, it's difficult to get past that.
I was actually looking forward to listening to the album because I knew that I hadn't really appreciated him before. I genuinely went in with an open mind. I do. I couldn't run this show and run this podcast if I didn't genuinely go into every single album I have with an open mind. I mean, next month we've got albums that or bands that we've listened to before. I will go into it open-minded, and I wanted to like it, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't get over it. I tried. I genuinely, honestly tried. I mean, God, I even listened to Blinking Slipknot, and tried to listen to that. So I would give anything an absolute go. Otherwise, this wouldn't be a journey that it's on. But he's just overrated. I don't appreciate how you can possibly enjoy his musicality with that voice. It's just Tosh. It's so overrated. It's unbelievable. So, but it must be because of the musicality and the composition of the actual rock music behind it. And obviously he's brought in these really good guitars, and that would. I can appreciate that side of the album, but I just can't stand his voice. I think it's so overrated. But there we go. Dun dun dun.
Well, I can understand where you're coming from, but I think you have to look at it at 2 points of view. Either the voice of an artist is the selling point, or it is part of the instrumentality. And I think with Ozzy's that is the case. So in that respect, it does work because he has such great. He's been able to have such great guitarists that have great riffs, solos, and so forth. And yeah, he writes lyrics that touch with people as well. So yeah.
Yeah. Nah.
Anyway, I'm going to kick off the voting.
Did we not start with Trish?
Start with Trish.
Yeah,
okay.
we start with Trish.
Oh, okay.
Don't you start jumping the gun a little bit. Trish, what's your vote?
4 out of 5.
4. Paul.
Well, I'm going to agree with Trish. 4 out of 5.
No surprise here. A 1. It doesn't get a 0 because I did manage to get there, or half a point, because musically I will give it a 1 because there was some good raps in there, but nah, not for me. And don't forget, everybody that's listening to the show, this is about how we personally enjoy an album, not about how technically it is or how well it's composed or anything else like that. It's sheer votes for the sheer enjoyment that we get out of an album. But I tell you what, though, depending on what other votes come in for this, it's not bad for a headline act. For a headline act to get 2 4s is very unusual. Let me tell you that much now. Highly unusual. So, but there we go. So, right.
And also, Ozzy is a frontman as well, so you would want him headlining a gig, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We were questioning why the Pixies were the headline act. Because. Listen. We literally take the song with the most views, the most listened to on Spotify, and then we make that because we've got to put it in some order. And ultimately, if I was putting a concert together, I wouldn't have Manntra as the headline act, even though they had maybe the Who as a headline act. It would because they wouldn't sell as many tickets as Ozzy. It's as simple as that. So in reality, that's the case. But yeah, so what it looks like, The Who is our kind of big hit of an album, and when we get our missing panelists votes through, we'll update everybody. So bring it on. Thank you very much for making the show go on, and we're coming up to that end of the year, but next month's looking great. Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you very much, Trish.
Thank you.
And tune in for our next concert and our next podcast next month. Please like and subscribe because you'd be really nice if you did. Thank you very much and all the best.